This is a Ryobi chainsaw, and it's a RY3818. It's a 38cc chainsaw, 18 inch. I've had this one probably for the last 2.5 years. Still operate, and I know I've seen that a lot of people talk poorly about Ryobi products in general, but if you, well, I'll show it, but if you see what I've cut up with this, you'd be pretty impressed with what it's capable of. And both the pull-on and this Ryobi are considered the basic home user chainsaws. As far as the Ryobi RY3818, I have never had a problem with it starting. If you follow the steps that it tells you to follow, it starts up every time. And both of these, the pull-on and the Ryobi, both have to be primed, full choke. Pull it so many times, you'll feel both of them give a little kick, then push the choke all the way in, and then pull the start. This is only my personal opinion based on these chainsaws that I've used, so I'm not talking as a professional, but talking as someone who's used multiple brands. What I would say really matters when it comes to home use chainsaws is that if you maintain them, they'll last a long time. And when I say maintain, I'm just talking make sure you have the right fuel to oil ratio. You do put bar chain oil in it, and then the biggest thing on any of these is keeping the inside of the chain cover clean, because once this gets gunked up, it definitely does not operate the way that it should. And then the other thing, regardless of which chainsaw you're using, is making sure that you have a sharp chain. One thing I've learned over the years is if you happen to do anything that, such as logs laying on the ground or cutting roots, is don't hit dirt or rocks, because if you want your chain to become dull very quickly, that's the one way to do it. Something else that I've learned is how to sharpen chains, because depending on how you're using it, unless you want to buy a lot of chains, it's a good idea to learn how to sharpen chains. And there are multiple ways. I mean, obviously you can just take it to a shop and have someone sharpen it for you, or you can take it upon yourself to sharpen chains. One method is to use this Power Care chain sharpener, and of course you have to make sure you have the right bit to properly sharpen the chain that you're sharpening. And then there's also the hand method of sharpening with files, handle, and your depth gauge. And then you can also purchase a machine that makes it a little bit easier to sharpen your chains when you need to. As far as the Ryobi, as far as the air filter, you just pull that up. It's got a filter right here. Just pull it over, and there's your filter. It needs to be cleaned, but it was just used. And slide that back on, push that down, and ready to go. With the Ryobi, the one thing I like is that parts for it aren't that expensive, and I don't think I ordered directly from Ryobi, but I did have to replace this whole component right here. One, because the pole rope kept binding, and then eventually it just broke off, so I bought a whole new one, and I want to say it was like maybe $9 for the whole thing. This is just me, but if you happen to have a bunch of tools or gas-powered tools that use both mixed fuel oil and just fuel, I make it very apparent on them whether it's mix or not, because, for example, this 4-cycle Ryobi doesn't take a mix. The oil is separate from the fuel, and then the pull-on is mix. The Ryobi is mix. Ryobi, both 18-inch chainsaws, use the S or Y62. There are a lot of brands that are interchangeable as far as, you know, what you can buy for a pull-on, you can buy for Ryobi, especially with chains. Most of the time when you buy chains, they're going to tell you the different makes and models that use certain chains, but I've also experienced it where a chain is not listed, but I've used the chain and it worked. Probably not the safest thing, but never had any issues with it not working. The blades for these chainsaws are reversible, so of course if it becomes damaged, it's not really reversible, but when you see that it's wearing on one side, you can flip them over. And I say that only because somebody I know was told that their chainsaw blade was upside down, and so they obviously didn't know that you could reverse it. And the only reason why they said it was upside down is because the words printed on the blade were upside down, so they said it was upside down. So here's where I have to disagree with the Ryobi naysayers, or those that say Ryobi is not a good product or a brand. So even though I had the pull-on chainsaw well before the Ryobi, I used the pull-on for a very short time before starting this project, and the project was cutting down 21 and possibly a few more, cutting down black walnut trees, and the pull-on basically gave out and I ended up using that Ryobi. So this is everything that I cut with the Ryobi RY3818 chainsaw. And that was only part of it. So I also cut all that. Everything that's under this tarp right here, all of this was cut with that Ryobi chainsaw. And also every bit of this was cut with that chainsaw. So the fact that that one chainsaw was able to cut all this speaks very highly of that chainsaw. I got it. There are many different makes, brands, models out there, and you know, it's all, sometimes it's just luck of the draw. as far as how well something works or doesn't work. But apparently I got a good draw when I bought that chainsaw. Now the one thing I will say, as far as this doesn't say anything specifically about the Ryobi chainsaw itself, but probably purchased uh, between 10 and 15 new chains to do all this. But that's the chain, that's not the chainsaw. And then on top of that is when I learned how to sharpen chains and using different methods. And in some cases, the chains were sharpened good as new, and in some cases they didn't last very long. But I probably saved quite a bit of money not buying new chains every time I did all this work. But I would still give this specific chainsaw by Ryobi, the RY3818, a thumbs up, because it was able to do quite a bit. None of this wood at all, or none of these logs, none of the trees, none of the stumps were cut with the Echo Timberwolf CS590. I'm using it now, but it was not used to cut any of these trees.
Please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks again.